Deputy Pauline Tully.
Thank you, Chair. Minister, children with special educational needs are amongst the cohort, I think we all agree, missed out the most when school buildings were closed, and they require additional support in school to make up for lost time. Now, we know, however, that due to the substitution crisis, many schools have had to deploy their special education teacher away from their teaching to cover mainstream absences. And I mean, this is far from ideal, but it's the reality. So last year, schools could bank those special education hours to use in other times so that children with additional needs didn't lose out. So I don't understand why this banking option is still not being reintroduced. So while the substitution announcement last week is positive, special education hours have been and will continue to be lost without the banking system being brought in. So will you safeguard the educational hours by committing to bringing back the banked hour system? And I also have serious concerns with the levels of support that school leaders are receiving from the HSE. I mean, you previously said that school leaders can still contact the HSE for help, but that's not the same as bringing back testing and tracing to the levels previous. I don't think that school leaders should have to contact parents of close pod contacts and organise for antigen tests. They have enough on their plate. Many of them are teaching principals. So we need to bring back school-specific contact tracing teams, but this has not happened. So is this something that will happen? And just the last thing is that Leaving Cert students have been in contact with me and their parents, and they're very concerned about the loss of teaching hours due to teacher absences, which obviously cannot be helped. And I do welcome the initiatives to try and find subs. But students are missing out for weeks at a time. It varies from school to school. It varies even within schools from class to class. So I'm just wondering, will this or how will this be addressed when it comes to setting Leaving Cert exams this year? Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy. Just specifically around the banking of hours, there were actually a number of families last year who were criticising the arrangement around the fact that special education teachers could be used to bank hours because they felt that their children weren't getting the support when they actually needed it. So there's no actual withdrawal of provisions. It just means that SETs will be used for the purpose that they should be used. So SETs now shouldn't be used for substitution purposes. As a last resort, schools were allowed to use it where there were substitution issues and where there were teacher absences. But hopefully now with the success of the vaccine rollout and the measures that Minister Foley has put in place, there shouldn't be that need in the same way that there was in the past. So schools have been asked not to bank those hours because children with additional needs need the support there and then. Otherwise, they're getting very intensive teaching in a very short space in time when it should be over a period of time. But we do acknowledge that there obviously was a substitution crisis, and I hope that that now has been resolved in the main. Thank you.
Thanks very much. And just in relation to some of the other issues that you raised there, Deputy Tully, in relation to the HSE and contact tracing and all that, you will appreciate that that is a public health decision. Public health have made various decisions at various times in terms of operational matters, and they made the decision there in late September in relation to the operation of close contact tracing within our schools. What I will say in relation to that is that at that point we had thousands of children who were excluded from school as close contacts because they didn't have COVID symptoms. In fact, they didn't develop COVID whilst they were stood down from school for 10 days or more. And there was a view at that time as well that wasn't sustainable going forward, that we would have such a large cohort of students out of school. But notwithstanding that, as I said, that is a public health decision, and public health have made another decision now enacted as of Monday, which was the rollout of antigen testing. And I want to acknowledge, as I said earlier, there's been extraordinary buy-in from parents and guardians in relation to that. We've seen it in these early days. And in terms of principals and school leaders, I want to acknowledge that that they have been hugely cooperative and have been very positive in relation to this development for the schools. And indeed, I would say that many of them have been looking for antigen testing, and the HSE have ensure that that's in place now. In terms of principals, principals are being asked in terms of when there is a positive case in a pod, that parent will inform the principal. The principal then informs the other 5 parents within that quadrant. After that, then it's entirely a matter for parents. Parents apply to the call centre for the antigen test, and as I've said, there's been an extraordinary buy-in from that in the last day, but in the last number of days. But equally so, want to say that that's a measure for primary schools within the special school setting, as Minister Madigan will elaborate. The contact tracing system remains in place, but these are very much so, Deputy, public health decisions that are implemented by public health in terms of contact tracing, antigen testing, as we've already said earlier.